here is a box office attraction. And because of her box office attraction, it's generating more eyeballs to the...
From the outset, it's hard to miss the glaring miscalculation that many fans have been buzzing about recently. In what was supposed to be a bold, groundbreaking campaign by Nike, the brand instead managed to deliver a series of missteps that left fans scratching their heads and, in many cases, shaking their fists. Our Sport Pulse takes you through every twist and turn of this controversial ad, outlining the ways in which the marketing machine tripped up when it came to showcasing Caitlin Clark, one of the most influential figures in women's basketball today. Nike, a titan in the world of sports marketing, is no stranger to crafting compelling narratives around its athletes. However, their latest commercial, designed to hype up a star lineup of WNBA talent, somehow managed to miss one crucial element: giving Caitlin Clark the spotlight she so rightly deserves. Instead of celebrating the cultural phenomenon that is Caitlin, the brand's commercial predominantly focused on other athletes, leaving many viewers feeling as though the superstar was an afterthought, a mere cameo rather than the central force behind the game's narrative.
WNBA product, therefore more revenue for the WNBA product. Don't you think y'all are going to benefit from that too?
Let's break it down. In the run-up to the campaign's release, Nike promoted an ad where they made several bold claims about the stars of women's basketball. In one of the preliminary teasers, the brand even highlighted figures like Juju Watkins, Sabrina, and other key players, all of whom were proudly emblazoned on a stylish t-shirt that celebrated their contributions. Yet, when it came time to mention Caitlin Clark, the narrative faltered. Her name was barely whispered in a fleeting 10-second clip, a duration that felt more like an afterthought than a proper salute to her accomplishments. One can't help but feel that Nike went out of their way to undercut the very energy and influence Caitlin Clark has brought to the court. It wasn't simply a case of an editing error. It was a deliberate, albeit misguided choice that sent shockwaves through the fan community. The irony is palpable. How does one of the most magnetic talents in the sport get relegated to a cameo role in a campaign that otherwise reveres its other athletes? In our Sport Pulse's analysis, the decision appears to be a clear example of a marketing strategy gone wrong, one where the brand's internal priorities and assumptions seem entirely misaligned with the expectations and passions of its audience. Even those who might not be die-hard fans of women's basketball found themselves questioning the rationale behind such a glaring omission.
But the one Nike athlete who just happens to be the most marketable, who just happens to be the most noticeable, who just happens to be the most recognizable, who just happens to be the face.
The commercial opened with an ad hyping up A'ja Wilson, a player who has, without a doubt, earned her accolades on the court. In a move that felt like an attempt to emulate the hype surrounding Michael Jordan, Wilson was portrayed as a near-mythical figure. The narrative built slowly, crafting an aura of anticipation and respect. Then, at the very last second, in a twist that left viewers dumbfounded, Caitlin Clark was tossed in for a mere 10 seconds of screen time, an inclusion that was so brief it felt akin to an accidental cameo in a major blockbuster. Consider the sheer impact of this misstep. Imagine a situation where a groundbreaking film spends only a few moments on its most promising character, a character who has not only revolutionized the genre, but has also redefined audience expectations. That, essentially, is what Nike's campaign did. In our Sport Pulse's view, it was as if the brand was trying to disguise the mistake with a last-minute fix that barely registered on the radar of true fans. Even those who were predisposed to criticize the campaign had to pause and reflect. How could a company of Nike's stature and marketing expertise commit such an oversight?
Of women's sports, period. Not the face of the WNBA, she's that too. The face of women's sports, period. When we have her on...
There's a particularly amusing moment when the commercial features a voiceover that introduces Caitlin Clark as Rookie of the Year. It's almost as if the brand was attempting to retrofit her presence into the campaign with post-production edits, hoping that a hastily recorded voiceover would compensate for the lack of genuine screen time. In doing so, they inadvertently underscored how tokenized her appearance was, like a signature cameo inserted into an otherwise fluid narrative. Our Sport Pulse couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. It's as if Nike believed that a quick, offhand reference was enough to placate a legion of fans who have watched Caitlin Clark's career soar. No modern misstep in the digital age goes unnoticed, and Nike's fumbled campaign was no exception. Fans across social media platforms quickly mobilized, pointing out the glaring disparities in how the athletes were treated. They compared Caitlin Clark's minimal presence to the extensive promotional efforts given to other players. Memes, tweets. This isn't just marketing hype, it's a reflection of a seismic shift in the landscape of women's sports. Caitlin Clark isn't merely another athlete. She represents a cultural phenomenon that has reinvigorated interest in women's basketball. In an era when media coverage often overlooked the achievements of female athletes, her rise has become emblematic of a broader movement toward equality and recognition in sports. The shift isn't solely about numbers, though they are impressive. It's about a new narrative that celebrates skill, tenacity, and authenticity. When Nike opted to give Caitlin Clark a token appearance rather than building a campaign around her, it wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a sign of deeper disconnects within their marketing strategy. It's as if the brand believed that by featuring a brief clip of the superstar, they could suffice with the bare minimum, while simultaneously hyping other athletes who didn't have nearly the same impact. For those of us who follow the sport with a discerning eye, this was more than a marketing miscalculation. It was a statement that said, "We're not ready to fully embrace the future of women's basketball."
Our roster, even if it's not her commercial per se, let's at least throw her some credit and toss her a bone, shall we? Nike chooses.
The ad campaign's uneven treatment of its subjects creates an interesting dichotomy between the narratives surrounding Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. On one side, you have A'ja Wilson, an undeniably talented and accomplished player who has rightfully earned her place in the conversation about elite talent in the league. Wilson's portrayal in the commercial was carefully crafted, with an almost mythic quality that suggested she was the second coming of a legendary icon. The visuals, the music, and the overall tone all contributed to an elevated image that many viewers admired. Yet just as the commercial builds momentum around Wilson's prowess, it abruptly shifts to include Caitlin Clark, a player whose contributions, influence, and sheer talent have made her a household name in women's sports. The treatment of her segment, however, was anything but elevated. It was as if the brand, in a last-minute scramble, attempted to retrofit her into a narrative that was never designed to accommodate her. Rather than celebrating her in her own right, the campaign relegated her to a mere accessory, a fleeting cameo that served as little more than a nod to her existence.
They had a commercial they released where they mentioned Juju Watkins, they mentioned Sabrina, they mentioned all the athletes that were on the t-shirt other than Caitlin Clark and Paige Becker.
This two-pronged narrative strategy highlights a significant flaw in Nike's marketing approach. On one hand, there's an attempt to create an aura around A'ja Wilson, painting her as an icon. On the other, the omission and subsequent token inclusion of Caitlin Clark undermine the very idea of authenticity. It's akin to hosting a star-studded event and then announcing, "Oh, by the way, we have another guest in just for the record." For those watching closely, this was not just a miscalculation. It was a fundamental misreading of the cultural and economic reality that Caitlin Clark represents. Beyond the flashing cameras and the carefully curated social media clips, there is a truth that speaks to the heart of what makes Caitlin Clark such a phenomenal force. While many athletes find themselves embroiled in the theatrics of media cycles, Clark's focus remains unwavering. She isn't caught up in the dramatics of ad campaigns or the pressures of media narratives. Instead, she spends her time perfecting her craft, studying game film, honing her shooting mechanics, and preparing for the next challenge with a determination that borders on relentless. In contrast to the marketing circus surrounding her, Caitlin Clark's day-to-day life is marked by discipline and an unyielding work ethic. Every leaked clip from her training sessions shows a player who is continually pushing her boundaries, refining her skills, and setting new standards for excellence. It's a quiet revolution on the court, a reminder that true greatness isn't manufactured through ad budgets or flashy commercials, but is earned through hard work and dedication. Our Sport Pulse is quick to point out that while the media may be busy debating the minutiae of screen time, the real story is unfolding in the gym, on the practice court, and during those high-pressure moments in games.
I saw this, I checked my birth certificate just to make sure. Yeah, I was born at night, not last night, Nike, not last night.
This work ethic is what separates legends from those who merely capture the public's eye for a moment. Caitlin Clark is not interested in fleeting fame. She's committed to a legacy. And while the marketing teams at big brands might scramble to tie her image into their narratives, the reality is that her influence transcends any single commercial or endorsement deal. For fans who have followed her rise, every basket she scores, every record she breaks, reinforces the fact that she is the driving force behind the resurgence of interest in women's basketball.